Welcome back to another explainer. Today, we're taking on what's arguably one of the most complex geographical puzzles on the planet, India's international borders. We're basing our journey right off some fantastic visual mapping and research from Study IAS. We're going to take these incredibly dense territorial realities and break them down into clear, sticky concepts. So, whether you're a dedicated UPSC aspirant gearing up for exams, or just a curious learner wanting to make sense of the geopolitical map without all the clutter, well, you're exactly where you need to be. Okay, let's just dive right into our roadmap for today. We'll start with the 15,106 kilometer perimeter, then trace the historical lines, check out the flashpoints and choke points, and finally wrap up with security and border management.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the 15,106 kilometer perimeter, and mapping the massive scale of India's frontiers.
15,106. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the staggering total length in kilometers of India's land borders. To really put that into perspective, that's literally like driving coast to coast across the United States 3.5 times. Securing a perimeter that vast requires an unbelievable amount of resources, constant vigilance, and the agility to adapt to environments that flip dramatically from 1 kilometer to the next. It's really the ultimate test of geographic and geopolitical management. And of course, India shares this massive perimeter with some major geopolitical players: Pakistan, China, Bangladesh, and Nepal. Now, what's fascinating here is that each boundary carries its own totally unique terrain. We're talking everything from bone-dry deserts to incredibly dense forests. Plus, each comes with its own highly sensitive diplomatic dynamic. So, managing relationships and security across this line, it means juggling vastly different international realities all at the exact same time. It is a constant, incredibly multifaceted balancing act. Moving right along to Section 2, tracing historical lines and the documents that shaped modern borders. Now, you really can't understand the modern map without looking at two foundational historical demarcations. First, you have the Radcliffe Line, which was drawn during the 1947 partition to define the western borders. Then, on the flip side, you've got the McMahon Line, originating way back from the 1914 Simla Convention, which shapes the eastern frontier. Understanding these very specific colonial-era strokes of the pen is absolutely crucial. I mean, these aren't just old names in a history book. They are the literal active blueprints of the territorial layouts we see today. Which brings us to Section 3, flashpoints and choke points, and how we navigate these geographical extremes. So, let's talk about the LAC, or the Line of Actual Control. This is a concept you absolutely have to know if you're looking at territorial relations between India and China. Now, the key thing to remember here is that it represents a practical, on-the-ground reality of where military presence actually is, rather than a finalized, mutually agreed-upon international boundary. Getting a solid grip on exactly what the LAC is, well, that's just an essential building block for making sense of the broader geopolitics in the region. And managing these boundaries, it literally means surviving geographical extremes. Just try to imagine the sheer logistical nightmare of it all. On one hand, you're trying to maintain troops and heavy equipment up in the freezing, sub-zero mountainous heights of the LAC. And then, on the exact same day, you've got teams patrolling the humid, shifting, waterlogged marshlands of Sur Creek down west. Honestly, the hostile geography itself is just as much of a headache for national security as the actual politics are. This extreme geography naturally creates some major vulnerabilities, bringing us to the strategic importance of the Chicken's Neck Corridor. Also known as the Siliguri Corridor, this absolutely vital artery connecting different parts of the nation is, get this, at one point barely 22 kilometers wide. That's it. So obviously securing this highly constricted choke point is a massive priority for internal security. It really just goes to show you that sometimes the absolute smallest sections of the map demand the most intense strategic attention. And that leads us into our final part, Section 4, Security and Border Management, the front line of international relations. Ultimately, all of these lines, extremes, and choke points culminate into today's modern security realities. We're talking about managing incredibly complex territorial disputes, adapting on the fly to rising global tensions, and somehow maintaining internal security across 15,106 kilometers of unforgiving terrain. It's a nonstop, high-stakes balancing act. This stuff isn't just geopolitical trivia, you know? It's the literal, everyday mechanism of keeping a nation sovereign in a world that is constantly shifting. So, I'm going to leave you with a question to chew on. Based on everything we've unpacked today, which border do you think is the most strategic? Is it the heavy historical weight of the Radcliffe Line, the freezing tense extremes of the LAC, or maybe the geographic bottleneck of the Chicken's Neck? Something to think about. Thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive explainer. Stay curious, keep studying, and I'll catch you in the next one.